Kriss Vector.
Gbbr Kriss Vector.
Gbbr gas blowback Kriss Vector.
The new Kriss Vector prototype.
My beloved Gbbr Kriss Vector.
Gbbr gas blowback Kriss Vector.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Krytac Kriss Vector. This is a replica coming out in December of 2023. Highly anticipated. A lot of people are trying to get this thing right now, so we're just going to briefly kind of go over what's going on and why there's so much hype surrounding this release. In order to understand why so many people are freaking out about this, we have to go back about 10 years to when KWA originally released the first gas blowback Vector. It was the first Kriss product to ever hit the market. So this is a big deal. A lot of people were collecting this thing. A lot of people were buying it. From what people were saying is this was a very, very solid build. There was nothing wrong with the build quality of KWA's iteration of this replica. The only downsides that some people mentioned is that the stock where it attached to the lower receiver of the Vector would actually come broken a lot of the times. And that was if you're buying secondhand, which brings me to my next point. You can only buy the KWA Vector secondhand. KWA made a fatal mistake when they were manufacturing the Kriss Vector, and that is they did not get licensing. If you're unfamiliar with how licensing in Airsoft works, essentially if you're a replica manufacturer, gotta say replica so I don't get demonetized, if you manufacture Airsoft replicas, you have to get a license from the original company that makes that
gun.
There's no avoiding it. Generally, there's a business agreement, so if I'm going to be manufacturing your creation, I'm going to give you a kickback. So KWA didn't do this, and they just kind of went ahead and released this awesome gas blowback rifle, and they quickly had to cease production. Right now, the KWA Vector sells for about $700 on eBay, and that price is after Krytac announced their version of the Gbbr. It's still $700, even though we know there's a new one coming out, and that's part of why so many people are excited about this. The Vector is probably one of the most recognizable guns on the planet. It's very unique in the way that it looks. It has a very state-of-the-art recoil suppression system. Before we move forward, I'd like to take a look at the specifications and features that this thing is going to offer. MSRP $400, so pretty reasonable price, especially for a gas blowback. I mean, can't get much better than that. We are going to be looking at a receiver that's made out of polymer, unfortunately. However, there is a bit of aluminum in there, so overall, I mean, it should be fine. And in terms of rails, they are going to be throwing a couple of rails on there, nothing too crazy, just some standard little Picatinny rails right on the front, so you can put sights and foregrips and whatever you're going to put on there. They are going to be sending you some folding sights, which is a nice touch, and in terms of the selectors, ambidextrous never hurts. As far as the charging handle goes, you are going to be getting a realistic charging handle there, so you should get some tension on that. It should feel real nice, sound real nice. It's part of the gun. It's why you're buying a gas blowback. The stock does fold, which is to be expected. It was just like that on the KWA version. However, hopefully they reinforced the little junction between the stock and where the stock attaches to the upper receiver, because what we saw with the KWA version is if you dropped it and it had the stock folded out, you might actually end up cracking or entirely breaking off your stock. So hopefully they reinforce that or solve that problem, but I guess we'll just have to find out. In terms of the magazines, they're going to be holding 60 rounds, which in my opinion is a bit on the higher end of ammo capacity, so that's always nice. Moving into the internals of this thing, we are going to be looking at a shortened bolt, so everything's going to be a fire faster rate and everything like that. They did decide to follow the real design of the Kriss Vector, so there is a recoil suppression system, if you will. Recoil's not going to be that strong. You should still feel something, but there's going to be something to be desired there just because of how the system is engineered. In terms of the hop-up, we are looking at an Allen locked hop-up system, so unfortunately you are going to need an Allen key on the field, depending on how you look at it. Convenience or functionality, it's kind of up to you on this one. I think it's a solid feature. It's pretty standard nowadays. They are boasting a quick release inner barrel on here, which is kind of nice. I don't know how quick releasey it'll be. It'll be interesting to see how many screws you actually got to take out in order to get to this thing. As far as technical specifications are concerned, I'm not going to go too in depth. You're more than welcome to check out the website. I'm just going to go over the main selling points of this thing. First things first, we're looking at a 335 FPS, kind of around there, range. which is 1.04 joules, they're calling it. That's pretty solid. I mean, that's what I would expect from a gun like this. You're not really going to be getting a lot of power out of such a short barrel. When it comes to the inner barrel, you're only going to be getting 120 millimeters, which I'm going to put that into perspective for you. This right here is my ARP9. The barrel is actually going to start right about here and end right about here. So, and that's 126 millimeters. So you can kind of see why 120 millimeters is really, really short. And this thing does not have the greatest accuracy. That's partly my fault. I don't clean this thing for shit. But that being said, you're not going to be headshotting with the Krytac, okay? This thing's an SMG. It's not a sniper. I just want to put that out there. Threads are going to be 14 millimeter counterclockwise. Rate of fire is looking pretty solid at 17 RPS. That's more than enough. I sometimes run 15 on my Polar Star just because of overkill. It gets a little touchy once you get past 15. So you're not really going to be worried about the rate of fire on this thing. It does claim to operate off of green gas and CO2. So I'm sure you have to select which magazines and kind of tune the gun to whatever gas you're using. But that's nice that you can use green gas and CO2 for our cold weather enjoyers. Is this going to be a good gun? I can't really say. I mean, the gun doesn't come out for another 2 months. But what I can tell you is that Krytac's brand reliability is pretty high. I own a Krytac myself and I absolutely love it. One thing to note is that Krytac has not made a gas blowback gun yet. So the key takeaway there is that gas blowback rifles is not their specialty. They specialize in AEGs. So whether or not this is going to be a solid piece of equipment, we'll just have to wait and see. I personally have very good faith in their ability to pull this off. I think that all the products they've released so far have just held up well and they stand behind their products. So unless something absolutely groundbreaking happens between now and December, that's pretty much it, guys. There's no more news for this. And gentlemen, good luck getting a pre-order, because if you don't already have one, this thing's gonna go out of stock. And we all know what the scalpers are gonna do once they get a hold of this baby. That's it, guys. Have a good rest of your day and happy hunting.